Hey everybody, it's Mr. Mobbin coming at you again with another APGov video. This is our third video focusing in on topic 5.12, the media. Last time we were taking a look at the various types of electronic media in America's history. We looked at the radio, we looked at television, cable television, and the rise of the internet. But the new phase of this is the rise of social media. Apps such as Facebook, and then, YouTube, and then Twitter, to be able to connect people in new ways that we hadn't seen before. These social media apps create communities for people to be able to share information with one another. And it is especially popular with millennials and younger. And so, hopefully one of the things you kind of have to understand is that as people get older, the preferred media changes. So, right now, TV is still number one, but TV's days are numbered. It's going to, in the not too distant future, be replaced by the internet and social media as the primary provider of news. Now, when we talk about the power of social media is not just reporting on what is happening. It plays a critical role in organizing what becomes news. Like, for example, in March of 2017, we see the women's movement march that is going to be organized through communication on Facebook and other social media apps. And this thing that generates almost 1 million people showing up in Washington, D.C., is going to then become news and then reported on the various media outlets, including social media. So, it's one of those things where, places where you see news, in other words, news outlets, are not just now reporting news, they can actually create the news itself or play a critical role in creating the news itself. Now, when we do talk about social media as a news outlet, similar to the internet, but even more so, are concerns about, where is the truth? Is the information that's being provided, has it been vetted? Is it being provided by professionals? And chances are probably not. A lot of folks don't have their own personal website on the internet, but most folks do have their own personal social media sites. And so people can post what they consider to be news, or forward information that might appear to be news, and it's not news. It's rumor, it's conjecture, it's conspiracy theories, or whatever. So, once again, another one of these things that we've noticed is that as the news becomes more and more diverse in terms of where people can get it and who can generate it, being able to find quality news has become more and more challenging. Now, when we wrap this up, we want to talk about, some of the important roles that the media does play. And, one of the things that we've, mentioned previously is the impact of the media serving as a bit of a scorekeeper with regards to what's going on, particularly in terms of election coverage and campaign coverage and things like that. A lot of this would be described as horse race journalism. Once again, the idea of, talking about, well, which candidate's up, which candidate's down, has such and such candidate been improving in the polls, or have they been dropping in the polls? What's been causing the ups and down trends for these candidates? And more focus on that than what many would consider to be important things, or more substantive news, such as, what are these candidates' policy stances? What are they proposing? What are they supporting? What are they trying to achieve to help folks be able to determine which is a better candidate? But more of it is actually spent on who's up, who's down, that kind of stuff. And even with elected officials that may not be campaigning at a moment, there is a disproportionate amount of news that is, focused on things like presidential approval ratings. Right now, what is President Biden's approval rating? Well, what is that? What is it the result of? Where is it going? Is it going up? Is it going down? Things like that. So one of the roles that the media likes to engage in is being that scorekeeper. And it allows for easier news by the media because, you don't have to do a ton of research on it. You see what the polling is. The polls come to you. You see what the results are. And for many Americans, it's easier to know if somebody's up or down than the nuanced understandings of, policy matters. Something else that is an important function of the media is to serve as the gatekeeper. And what we mean by that is, when we say that these news outlets broadcast the news, we're making an assumption that we all have the same working definition of what news is. And that's not really true. News is in the eye of the beholder. News is is up to the opinions of those that actually own and run the media outlets. And with different news outlets run by different people with different ideology and certain goals and whatever, you're going to get different senses of what news actually is. So for example, if you look at Fox News, just for a moment here, if we look at Fox News, you can see on this particular occasion, it's focusing in a lot of attention on a recent mass shooting that was taking place in Sacramento. But then you scroll down and you see what else is, kind of being, focused in on in terms of news. We see, for example, a missing mom case. Is that big news? I don't know. Maybe in the minds of whoever runs Fox News, that is big. But something that is noticeable for sure is the focus in on news that is not very friendly to the Democratic Party. For example, a Democratic mayor in looks like a beach community that's imposing a spring break curfew that would seem, bad, okay? Or down here, focusing in on, aspects of possible unethical, if not criminal, activity of President Biden's son, Hunter Biden. So these are some of the things that the folks at Fox, believe are news. And this is important because what drives what these outlets perceive as news is to some degree predicated on what they think their viewers will think is news. And if you are Fox News and you're leaning, most of your viewers are more on the conservative side, things that do not look good for the Democrats tend to be, more, readily consumed than other things. So that's just one example. Now, of course, contrast that with the folks over at MSNBC. And note, if you look at MSNBC, their main story right here is focusing in on, a North Carolina Republican congressman that, appears to, be problematic to the leadership of the Republicans in Congress. Now, note, this isn't anywhere on the Fox News site, but it is on this one. They've got a small story here talking about the mass shooting in Sacramento, but look at what they've got here. They've got an article talking about, the possible links between Senator Ted Cruz and the January 6th Capitol insurrectionists. These are the Cawthorn story, the Ted Cruz story. These are things that, do not make the Republican Party look good. Down here, a couple more articles, once again, kind of, attacking Florida Governor Ron DeSantis. Once again, what is news? Well, for those that tend to be consumers of MSNBC news, they tend to be more left of center. And so they tend to more readily consume news that is going to be attacking the Republicans versus Democrats. So once again, Fox News versus MSNBC, you've got different types of news based in part on what they perceive is what their consumers want to see as news. And then you also throw in CNN. Now take a look here. This is a different headline than the other two, major cable news websites. This is tremendous amounts of information or news on foreign matters. In this case, the current Russian invasion of Ukraine and the devastation associated with that. So all sorts of articles and news tied into this, as well. And, you got to go way, way down to take a look at some other news. And guess what? You're not seeing news about, DeSantis particularly. You're not seeing news on Hunter Biden. You're not seeing news on Madison Cawthorn. So different news outlets are going to be, determining what they think is news, in part based on what they think is going to get clicks, it's going to get likes, it's going to get, viewership, and, that's tied to who they perceive their base of viewers will be. So, kind of keep that in mind. And, it does create a bit of an interesting cycle. Those that consume, for example, right-wing news, and those news outlets provide that kind of news because they think that's what their viewers want, well, then those folks become even more of the mindset that matches that ideology that's being promoted on that news outlet. So, for example, if you are someone that's already kind of conservative and you kind of live in a Fox News bubble, that's going to make you more conservative. If you are a little bit more liberal and you live in a MSNBC news bubble, you're going to become more liberal. And so that is going to be significant. And note that what the news thinks is news, news outlets think is news, that then affects how we as, the electorate communicate to our elected officials. So for example, if, say Fox News does a lot of stories about, growing, folks on the southern border trying to enter into the United States illegally, if that's a major story on Fox News, well, you're going to see more of those folks that watch Fox News communicate to their elected officials saying, "Hey, we got to do something on the border. That's a serious problem." If you're MSNBC and you're running a bunch of stories about how LGBTQ Americans are being denied civil rights in America, and you see that as a major news story again and again and again, well, then you're going to communicate that. If you're a viewer of that news outlet, you're going to communicate that to your elected officials saying, "Hey, we got to do more about LGBTQ civil rights in America." So understand this relationship between the news outlets, the electorate, and the elected officials. Once again, the media serving as a critical linkage institution. And then, as we've referenced before, the other major role of the media is to be that watchdog. The idea being is that we as the public cannot easily, readily keep tabs on what our elected officials are doing. But the media can and has a responsibility to do that. They have a responsibility to, investigate possible scandal and corruption, things that are not being done in government in a way that we would like as the electorate. Now, granted, there's a balance between like, hey, how much do you want to focus in on, salacious, sensationalist news versus just outright, hey, here's something problematic happening with the government and we need, the public needs to know about that. And note, we've seen more of the watchdog function come out in recent decades, over the last, I'd say, 50, 60 years, with significant effects. We saw the media play a critical role in showcasing the lies of the Johnson and Nixon administrations regarding the Vietnam War. They exposed the credibility gap, what was going on there. It took the media to uncover what was actually happening in the Nixon White House and with the Nixon re-election campaign committee with regards to the Watergate scandal. So you need that. You need the media to broadcast those things. Now, those were two big early bombshells to kind of start to have a change in how we view government, chipping away at our faith and confidence in government. Now, some might say, hey, it's not good to have, lack of faith and trust in government, but at the same time, we need to know the truth of what's going on. And that's continued ever since through Iran-Contra, through the Lewinsky scandal, all the way up to today. So understand that that is a very, very important role. But note, as the media has been less deferential to what elected officials and especially presidents want, that has created more of an adversarial relationship between elected officials and the media, out of a sense of, oh, the media is here just to play gotcha. The media is here to make me look bad. The media is my enemy. The media is not my friend. And that has changed that relationship. So, the role of the media is certainly complex. It is important. And once again, don't forget, the media, like political parties and interest groups, are a very significant linkage institution. All right? We'll see you next time. Bye-bye.